Some leaders leave footprints, others leave libraries. You're tuning into the Authors on Mission podcast, where industry giants become literacy legends. In every episode, we talk with authors who turn their brilliance into books that transform lives. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission. Welcome to your authorship experience. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Authors on Mission podcast, the podcast committed to bringing you top-tier insights and strategies from established experts who have achieved remarkable success in their fields and wrote a book about it. I'm your host, Danielle Hutchinson, the Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission, and today I am just thrilled to welcome Roberta Campbell, a woman whose journey is all about turning life's greatest challenges into purpose and mission. She transitioned from a 30-year career as a hairstylist to become a two-time author, motivational speaker, coach, and entrepreneur. Her bestseller, She Looks Fine, was co-authored with her daughter, Paige, and she is also known for her work with My Year with Bob, where she worked with Bob Proctor, who many of you might know from The Secret, and we're going to dive into that later on in the show. But really, what makes Roberta's story so compelling is how she transformed this, challenges into a mission to help others. She's founded the RC Academy, hosts the Unleash Her podcast, which you should all definitely check out. And she dedicates herself to empowering women to embrace their authentic selves and build confidence. So we're going to talk all about that and the process of writing her remarkable books on today's episode. Without further ado, Roberta, welcome to the show.
Oh, hi, Danielle. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. I'm inspired by everything I've read about you, and your book also is just really cool to know about. Before we dive into all that, though, I'm wondering, can you just give a little bit of more of a background to yourself? I touched upon a lot, but my main question to you is, what exactly along your path led you to writing your book?
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. So I got to tell you, most of my life, it was pretty good. I had a pretty good life and got married when I was 23 and traveled and had a couple of beautiful children, a boy and a girl, and I loved it. I was a stay-at-home mom. I worked part-time as a hairstylist, and then, many years later became an empty nester. And right after that, or during that time, in 2018, my 22-year-old daughter was hit by a car while crossing the street in a crosswalk. And I was thousands of miles away. I was actually training for hair extensions. And, I came back home and my life changed. I became a caregiver to my 22-year-old daughter. And it's crazy because I had just sold my house. I was in this new, amazing apartment. I had been there 3 weeks. And so I was not prepared for this, but apparently, God knew that was going to happen, if I can say this. It was a 2-bedroom apartment and I didn't need a 2-bedroom, but I later found out why. So my daughter had to move back in with me and I became her caregiver. And gosh, she sustained a lot of invisible injuries. One of them was a traumatic brain injury or a severe concussion. And so, when we talk about TBI, traumatic brain injury, I also just want to let everybody know that that is a concussion. It's a form of concussion. And so I didn't understand this. I had never really experienced it, and we struggled and we went through a lot. I mean, in 2 weeks, it was 3 different hospitals and just trying to fight and give her the care that she needed. So I was divorced at this time also. So I was, a single mom and just had no idea what I was doing. I needed help. It was about a year or 2 into it that I decided something needed to change. We needed to do something. And I started researching holistic and alternative treatments for my daughter. And things started helping her. Some of the treatments that she had done, and she had over 300 physical therapy appointments, you name it. But, I know that it does take time to heal from this, but we wanted the best healing that we could. I wanted to get her back on her feet. And I was also very fortunate that she did not have to relearn a lot of things. I know a lot of people that are in accidents like this have to start from scratch again, and that must be very difficult. But she did have vision therapy. Her eyes weren't converging. She had, chronic pain and migraines every day. So once we started seeing a little relief from some of the alternative treatments, I was like, people need to know about this. So I was in we were both in groups, support groups, and I could see so many other people were struggling. So just in 2021, early of 2021, I decided things needed to change, and I hired a mentor, Bob Proctor, and I was in his program for a year. And when I first was in his program, I have to tell you this, I got to share this with you. The idea to write a book came to me while staring at a candle, the flame of a candle. Interesting, huh?
Yeah, I mean, that's how inspiring could that be, right? Can you what exactly about that candle kind of, sparked that inspiration? It's a very, thing you'd see in like a movie or something, I'm wondering what exactly
Right?
made you think of that?
Yeah. So, Bob was all about like quiet time and meditating, which at that time, years ago, I did not like the quietness. So he's like, okay, if you can't meditate, just stare at the flame of a candle. And that's when I was like, oh my gosh, I have to write a book. And so I thought, how am I going to do this? And that's when the whole journey started, and everyone that I needed came into my life. I shared with some close friends of mine, and one of my friends introduced me to her friend who's an editor for a publishing company. So they helped us in that journey. My daughter ended up co-authoring the book with me because I had bought every book there was about traumatic brain injuries and anyone that had experienced it, but I had never seen it from the caregiver and from the patient side. So I thought this would be really great. They could hear both of us, our stories, and how we were not understanding. Like sometimes I thought, am I being tricked or something? Like, I do not get this. I don't understand. And with invisible injuries, I was trying to get her to move forward, and people were like, yeah, but I mean, she looks fine. And I heard that several times. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's the title of the book.
So it's interesting to see, throughout your life, it seems you've had these moments where, you're staring at a candle, or you hear somebody say something, or you shared with me in the past that like, an AI just came up with the idea of a title, right? So it's funny how these little things pop into your mind and then it becomes such a larger thing, it happens it's almost a cycle for you that you're inspired by these little moments, it seems. Is that true to say?
Yes, which I call just your intuition, that gut feeling, your God feeling. And just when you do be quiet, whatever that can look like to you. And if you're looking, you will get that nudge, that thought. And oh, girl, I'm just getting started.
Yeah, I mean, please, please give us a few more, minutes of that. What exactly do you do when you first feel that nudge? This is something that, our podcast is about aspiring authors, right? And people who, or want to write a book, or in the process of writing the book, maybe they have their book out there. We all feel that nudge. We all feel that, creative spark come to us. What did you do to harness it, right? You don't just kind of like let it sit and try next week to make it happen, do you? Or maybe, I mean, what would the first step be once you feel that inspiration?
Well, first of all, surrounding yourself by supportive friends and family, and understanding who you can share it with and who you cannot. And so I will tell you, years ago, which has probably been 20 years ago now, I shared with someone that I wanted to write a book. I read all the time, and I was in like, what was it, Oprah's book club and things like that. And as soon as she announced a book, I'd be at the library. I'd have that in my hands. So I loved reading, and I wanted to write my own book. And I had this idea, and I shared it with someone, and they laughed in my face. Like, who are you thinking that you are going to write a book? you're a hairstylist, you didn't go to college. This is all the things going through my head. They didn't say all these things. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I really I probably can't do that.
Yeah, so pretty much having a support group by your side, some people to run ideas, off of, and also to hold you accountable too, right? Because I'm sure once you started talking to them about these ideas, they were checking in on you like, so how's it going? And by that nature, you kind of have to continue on with it. I mean, perhaps at least that's how I've seen it in the past. Would you agree with that, or was it a little bit different for you?
Once I made the decision, because the biggest thing is you have to make the decision that you're going to do it. And I'm one of my word. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And so, I hear so many people talking and they're like, oh yeah, I have this idea, or I've always wanted to write a book. And I'm like, okay, well, what's holding you back? Or this, I don't have time, it's always an excuse. And I just am like, no, I'm not. Like I said, I'm going to do it and I'm going to do it. And what I've done, this is going to help others. And why are we holding this inside us when we know that we can help others? And, people are like, okay, I had shared with someone that I was going to write a book and they're like, do people even read books anymore? And I'm like, whoa. And so, then I was like, okay, now I need to be careful who I'm sharing this with. And I will tell you, I love books. I don't want to read from anything else. I want the book in my hand. And I think some of us are just like that. Some of us will do the audio or whatever, but there is a satisfaction in writing a book that I had no idea that it would be like this. See, ours was released on September 9th of 2022. We're still doing book signings.
Oh, that's incredible. That's awesome. You've been breathing life into it ever since. I always say it to my clients, it doesn't end when the book is on the shelves. You have to continue nurturing it. It's your baby. You raised it, and now stay in touch with it. Keep it, growing and, amplifying that. That's amazing that you're still doing that. Do you want to speak a little bit more about that? So was this recently that you're doing the signings?
Yeah. Okay. So there's been a few things also recently that came to my attention, and I'm like, wait a minute. March is Brain Injury Awareness Month. So I was like, we got to get out there. First of all, March every year, this should be one of our things that we do. And so that led to a couple of book signings that led to meeting someone from a literary magazine. And, you have no idea who you're going to meet. You just have to get yourself out there. And so I loved that. And then just recently, I also found a new twist not twist, if you want to say, but I'm like, wait a minute, there's a different way to promote this. There's all these different angles. And so as a podcast host, also, I have to tell you, I was interviewing this woman who is a nurse and she had just wrote a book. And she said, yeah, I just go to conferences and I do a lot of things online. And it just so happened, I met some people from this hospital in California, I think she said, and they wanted to order 6,000 books.
I mean, hey, you never know, as soon as you think maybe the road is ending, you come to those curves in the road and it's amplified even more. So that's incredible. I mean, congratulations. To all of our listeners today, not only should you be picking up that book and checking it out yourself, but you never know, these kinds of opportunities are going to come your way. Now, Roberta, when you mentioned this literary magazine, are you referring to Canvas Rebel? Or perhaps something else? I've read your interview in Canvas Rebel.
No, that was one from a while ago.
Okay.
Oh, this is a new one. I don't have the name right in front of me.
Okay. Well, perhaps you can share it and we could, add a link maybe into the,
okay.
So we can check it out too. Well, since I did mention Canvas Rebel, I actually, wanted to kind of touch upon that.
Yeah.
In that you shared a really powerful story in there about walking by a river during a really challenging time. It kind of refers to gratitude, which is a huge thing that, authors and everybody should be thinking about in their lives. So would you like to share a little bit about that with our audience?
Yeah. First of all, you are amazing at research. You did.
I always like to know who I'm talking to. I actually was on a podcast with somebody once who literally was just like, so who are you? I'm like, Well, you invited me on the show, so I always like to know a lot. So thank you for that. I'm a pro researcher, I suppose, but please, I mean, share more about this. It's a really cool story that I think our listeners would benefit from.
Yeah, thank you. So that was in 2020. And so that was 2 years after my daughter's accident when we were both struggling. She still was. I was struggling, trying to help her. And this was in 2020 when everything happened, everything, shut down for a while. And the one thing that I had, my career as a hairstylist, was taken away from me.
Mm.
And I was like, you think, oh, I never say what next. I never say these things, but it was that point that it was like, I felt like I had lost everything. And so for me, being in nature is just so healing. And I took a walk down to the river and I did. I really was like, okay, God, like this is it. I don't know how I'm going to make next month's rent. I I'm letting go. I give up. Like, I need some guidance. I need some help. And I just prayed that day and asking for help. And next thing I knew, everything started to change. So there is something of just letting go and giving it up and saying, okay, all right, now guide me.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that kind of ties into the whole idea of, looking at the candle too, like you mentioned, in a different regard, but kind of like trusting the process of, the ideas coming to you, the next phase in your life coming to you, the strength coming to you. And first, thanks for sharing that, because I know like talking about difficult times is always, kind of rehashing it. Yeah, I think that's something we can all really hold on to today as a little piece of wisdom with us. So thanks for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
But, while you were saying that, yeah, I kind of was thinking a little bit more about, She Looks Fine in the process of writing that, which in itself was probably just tremendously difficult to write, being that when you write about such a traumatizing event, you're reliving that trauma too. So I'm wondering if you don't mind sharing a little bit about what strategies did you and Paige, go through in writing this? I'm sure there's a lot of hard moments. A lot of our authors today who are listening are probably trying to write about similar difficult times in their own lives. What advice would you offer to somebody who's writing about something that's hard to write about? What do you do?
So what's interesting is like at first I was in like a mastermind. And so some of my colleagues were like, okay, you need to mark out, certain time of day to write. And I was like, that just doesn't work for me. I have to be inspired. I have to come from a certain place to be able to pull this stuff out of me. So, and then I will tell you, if it wasn't for the publishing company if it wasn't for our help, somebody helping guide us, I don't know if it would have made it to the publishing yet. So find someone to help you, first of all. You need guidance, you need help, or else you will spend the rest of your life trying to write this book. Set yourself a deadline too. But at the end, I was pretty much finished. And I looked at my daughter's notes and I was like, I was a little scared. Hers came out beautifully. And she was like, well, I'm just trying to jot down a few little bits and pieces here and there. Like she shared some things. She shared, things that not wanting to go on with her life. And it was really hard. So thank goodness that we had some people to help us and to guide us. And I gave her space and time. And so I was like, I want this to be released on Mother's Day. I feel like this would be such a beautiful gift for me to be able to do. And that didn't happen. And so that would have been in May. And instead it was September, but it was September 9th, which was the anniversary of her accident, which was perfect timing. So sometimes you got to let go on that too.
Yeah, that seems to be like just kind of another recurring theme, right? The letting go and all that. And, in order to get these messages, however, traumatizing they might be onto the page, you need to let go a little bit, right? To take a step back. Another question I kind of wanted to transition into also is the process of co-writing, especially about the writing process. What was that like? I mean, would you and Paige just write separately and then combine things? Would you do it at the same time? Were you in the same room as each other? How does that work for anybody who's interested in, writing with another person?
We did it separately
Mm.
for the whole beginning of it. So what did that take? Like a year, probably close to. We spent a year writing separately, and then we would come together and kind of look at things and, have some things that were suggested to us. And we're like, oh, what do we think about that? And sometimes I would pick up the slack and sometimes she would too. I mean, even though she was struggling with this brain injury, she was getting better and she's really good. She's really smart and she was very helpful along the way.
I mean, it goes right back to having like people by your side to kind of bouncing ideas on and, back and forth. So yeah, thanks for that. That's, an incredible tip as well. So, more about the book, especially what you just said is the book kind of serves as, both a memoir for your experiences, but also as a resource for others. There's lots of lessons to be learned. So, how did you balance telling your personal story while also getting those messages across and those lessons? Did you have a certain strategy for doing that?
Oh my gosh. The lessons learned, this was something that the publisher suggested. That was not something we had in mind, and they had suggested that. And we're like, oh, okay. I like that idea. But I have to touch on this because just something recently, as I told you, with doing these book signings, something hit me and I'm like, wait a minute. So for anyone that has written a book, listen, sometimes you're going to wake up and you'll be like, oh, I missed this. And so when I was interviewing the nurse and she said she had just had this order for 6,000 books for this hospital. Well, when I first started promoting our book, I did call like one, I believe I called one gift shop in one of the hospitals here. And I don't know, spoke a little bit and then nothing happened from it. And I said, why did I stop? I quit. And so now I have a mission now. And as soon as I have time, I'm back out there. So you need to relook at this and say, wait a minute, how can I help others? Because that's what our book is. Yes, it's kind of like a memoir in our story, but we have done a ton of research and we can help others. So, keep going. You get one no and you stop. No, I don't work that way. Like, that's when I told you I'm just getting started. There's so much more to this. And if I might add, could even turn into a series.
Oh, wow. Is that a secret that maybe not a lot of people know about yet? Is that what's next on the horizon for you?
Yes. Actually, my daughter was the one that suggested it a while back. And I was kind of like, oh my gosh. At first I'm like, oh, I can't even think about this. And then the more that it's kind of sat with me, I'm like, whoa, okay, I can see this. I see a vision now. So I don't like to talk about things before they're ready.
Too much,
but I'm going to tell you. Yeah. But when you see that, you're like, there is more to this, and don't stop, because your book can turn into so much more.
Yeah, I always say that too, don't stop no matter if it's writing or anything else in your life. You might feel like, hey, we got one book under our belt. Things are going great, and they are for you, right? But, if you have another idea, why not? I'm so curious to know what might be coming next. Make some guesses. Maybe it's kind of like, more of the recovery process, but it could be anything. So very curious to find out.
Well, just think about like how, was it chicken soup?
Okay.
Chicken soup for the soul. Is that what that's called? Right.
There's a bunch of those.
And then it like led to the next, to the next, to the next. And so you don't know, but if you don't get out there and try, you'll never know.
Never know. Yeah, that's right.
And anything is possible, even at any age. Like, I didn't start any of this until over 50.
Wow.
And I feel amazing. I feel like now I have a bigger purpose. And I think that just makes me feel young. It makes me feel younger. Like, okay, I got to take care of myself because I have a bigger mission here. And I'm ready. I'm willing. So let's go.
Yeah, yeah. And again, doesn't matter how old you are, what phase in your life you are, everybody listening today, you might be thinking like, I'm never going to get started on that book now, but don't let it stop you. I mean, here's Roberta, and she might be writing another.
And how about this? I am so sorry to interrupt you, but you got me going now.
Please continue. Yeah.
And have you ever thought, okay, that your book could turn into a movie?
And that's another thing to think about. Is that also what's on your list, Roberta?
Who knows? Who knows? So when I was in Florida, I was on vacation a couple years ago and I met this woman. She had written a book and she's like, they're turning my book into a movie. And I go,
Wow. Yeah. It's funny to think how, your book is a huge accomplishment in itself, but, a lot of people do see they resonate more when they hear the word movie too. Not that, books are huge, but like in the book world, it's a whole nother level of things. So that's really awesome.
yeah, we just don't know. But this is how I know the power of your mind. And if you really want something and if it's meant for you, then you need to go get it. And the right people will come into your life.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
definitely.
so here's one more thing.
Yeah.
So did we talk about the other book?
See, that's what I was going to segue into.
Okay.
To everybody listening today, there's a whole other side of this, which I would love to transition into now. When the reason, because I think we just got so excited about talking about the process with Paige and all that. But yeah, please tell us a little bit more about My Year with Bob.
Yes. So this was something that came up as I was writing She Looks Fine. And so I had this opportunity for this collaboration and I just needed to write a chapter. I forget how many words it was. I'm like, oh, I can handle that. That's way easy. So I ended up being in this anthology with 11 other authors that were in Bob Proctor's coaching program. And we had to tell our story about what we had learned, what we've overcome in that process. And this was a year-long program. And this was about halfway in it. So I was like, gosh, my life has changed tremendously with being under his mentorship. And he passed away while I was in his program. This was all, virtual program, coaching program that I was in. And I met a lot of people. So we came together and they put this book together. And so they wanted to hear from us, that how it's changed our lives. And so I'm like, okay, great. This is amazing. It was actually published, I think, before She Looks Fine. So it was kind of crazy. And we also, what we do is we donate all of the proceeds to Bob's foundation of choice. And so that's such an amazing thing too, to know that you're contributing in that way. But there are people from around the world. These are 12 people from around the world. And one of the women that put this together had a conversation with a movie producer. Had a meeting with a movie producer about doing a documentary about this book and our experiences. So you just never know.
You never know. Yeah. And I guess that's another reason why you were mentioning that before then, right? That the meeting behind it, having the movie, am I on the right thought wave as you right now?
Well, what's so funny, Danielle, is that at first I always said, our book's going to be a movie. Like it's going to be a movie. And then I never thought about the other book. I thought She Looks Fine. Okay. I thought that's going to be a movie. And I still believe that that is possible. So when I heard about this meeting, I was like, wait a minute. I can't think of his name. He was actually in Bob's program as well.
Okay.
So, so you never know who you're going to meet and where your connections are taking you.
Yeah, definitely. And it's become another theme of this show today too, is those connections and people, to be by your side and guide you. And you can always reach back out whenever you need something, or perhaps you have an idea for another project. So that's really cool. And so, to everybody listening today, you can not only check out She Looks Fine, but also My Year with Bob. I mean, two really awesome books to dive into today. Um, so yeah, I mean, do you want to share a little bit more about that one? We spent a lot of time on She Looks Fine. What was the process like for writing that one? I mean, it must be a lot different writing, just a chapter versus an entire book. How did the process differ? I know in terms of timeline, it definitely must have been a huge change.
Oh, it was so easy. One chapter is like so easy. My chapter is called Becoming Fearless. And so, if I will tell you, like the person I am today and that I was back then, today my chapter would be called Fearless. So, that's how much I have changed now and how much I've grown and transformed. But that process, it was fast. I mean, it was so fast and so easy that it kind of felt like it didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, we were speaking about this a little bit before the podcast about how, like, some books can take years to write, others you can knock out in a week. So, yeah, I mean, what did you notice about, the process being fast versus slow, pros, cons? I mean, for one, I know a positive would be, of course, getting it out there quickly, less work on your part, but what's your thoughts on that?
So it was kind of cool, even though we really didn't get to know each other, but being in a community with others, we really didn't spend a whole lot of time on this. I'm telling you, a lot of it was done in private and it was very fast. But I love having that, knowing that you've got others, you're just contributing together. And so, you're so excited to see everyone else's stories and what they took from Bob's program. I mean, it's really interesting. A lot of us have a lot of the same stories too, but I loved that. And that's why I think collaborations are the way to go. That would have been nice to start with that. So I might have been a little more prepared for our book.
Understood. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's funny how, certain opportunities and experiences come maybe out of order, but, you learn from it either way. And, now for the third book coming, you have the insights from both processes thrown in there.
Ooh, I do. And actually, now I have multiple ideas. So yeah, for sure. And I can see it now. It's just like, okay, now give me some time.
All right. Yeah, that's all I need to block, find the right moment to get started. And kind of going back to what you mentioned before, right? Finding the time to actually get it in there and get those ideas flowing. But there we go, just a matter of time. Now, sort of one couple more questions before as we start to, near the end of today's show. And one thing I do always like to talk about with my guests is, sort of the return that you've gained from this book and why, whether or not it was really worth it to put all this work into it and get it on the shelves. I know you mentioned before, you've had some amazing successes for years to come, but one avenue which I think for you in particular would be really a huge part is the feedback you get from it. Like, do you hear a lot of feedback from She Looks Fine, from perhaps other survivors or people who've gone through similar things? Have you heard a lot of people talking about how your advice has helped them by any chance?
Yeah. So, what's interesting, and I just noticed recently that when I introduced myself, I wasn't even introducing myself as an author.
Okay.
And I don't know why, for sure. So there's a little bit there that I'm kind of like reflecting on. And because this is the biggest accomplishment for me, the She Looks Fine book. But my daughter and I have been keynote speakers at one of the universities here. And that was, oh my gosh, I had no idea it was going to be what it was. And so first of all, books open doors to so many
Mm.
things, and they open doors to speaking engagements. And when I tell you this, I'm not telling this to brag, but I was paid in 1 hour what I would take me to make probably a week or 2 weeks in a hair salon. So when you see that, anything's possible. And it's not just about the money, but it's about, you have to follow through with all of that. So these people that were there had been struggling. People came, they saw it in the paper, they saw the press release, and they were like, "Can you please help me?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, yes." Like, they didn't know. So much more has been learned about recovering from a brain injury, from a concussion. And, 1 out of 4 people have experienced a concussion. You don't even have to hit your head. If you've been in a car accident and it's just a jolt to the head, it doesn't even have to be like contact. So many people, I think, are dealing with it, may not even realize it. And then others that came to this event were like, "Oh, please, anything." And so we also used to think that you had like 1 year, all of your recovery would be done the first year, and then you're kind of on your own. But that's not true. You can continue. And now with even, stem cell research and everything else, like, anything is possible for recovery. So to be able to be there and to say, "Yes, we can help you, and this book will help you." And we have put some things in there, and please feel free to reach out too. So we have had that feedback, and there's nothing more rewarding than that. And, I know that we also discussed sometime starting like a nonprofit or something, a foundation that we could give back. And that's also back in the making as well. But everything takes a little time, and I want everything to be done right. So it is very rewarding when you know that you can help others.
Yeah, definitely. And that's kind of where I was going with that. Somebody might write a book and they're hoping to grow their brand. They're hoping to get those speaking engagements. They're hoping to just, have something prestigious with their name on it. But at the end of the day, it's the people reading it who are the ones who are going to be impacted by it. So the true reward behind it is knowing that you're helping others, that, you're changing their lives. And, whether it be for the same conditions that, you and your daughter went through, or just the aspect of having to care for a loved one, changing your life for a loved one, right? Like, so many different themes that I think resonate with people. So it just must be really inspiring. It's really good.
Yeah, thank you. And all of that, even, the front cover of our book was something, we had all these photos taken. And then I was like, it just hit me one day, and I'm like, wait a minute. No, that's not it. The front cover. And I had to
Well,
approach
first,
my
I'm going to
daughter.
pause you right there. Hold it on up for us. Let us take a look at it, and tell us more about that story. So there's something behind this story, but let's take a look, everybody. Yeah. So I was actually looking at it myself earlier today. It is that your daughter on the cover. Wow. Okay. So she helped write the book, and she gets to be right on the front cover too.
Right.
So tell us more about that. Yeah.
So I just wasn't feeling these photos that were taken. It just didn't feel right. And I said, okay, I know this might be too much, and if it is, let me know. But I feel like we need to go back to that crosswalk. Yeah.
There's the crosswalk right there on the page, right there. Wow.
Yeah. So we went back, and this was exactly where it was taken. And we did all kinds of pictures, and we had to, keep walking in the crosswalk. I'm going to tell you, it was probably more difficult on me. No, it was like,
the writing process was difficult, but standing there where people are actively driving and having to almost like see that again. Wow. And for the cover too, the sacrifice there.
But healing, but it's all in healing.
Yeah.
So going back there, we did it a couple of years, and it's helps with your healing. You have to do it. You have to face it. You have to face the hard stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's just like another lesson to put out there. And, while we're on the topic though, too, I know you also have the cover for My Year with Bob right there too. Do you mind showing that to everybody as well? Might as well, right? Perhaps you didn't have as much of a say in this cover. I'm not sure.
No, I didn't. Okay, but this is what I love. Okay, I love the hourglass
Hmm.
because Bob used that a lot in his talks, and he would talk about, I actually have an hourglass myself. I had to buy one too. And so he would talk about how you need to live in the present moment. The only time that you have is right now. Stop living in the past. It's over. It's done. And he would hold up his hourglass, and show us and point to it. And so it was interesting. And he would tell stories, and he would tell story about someone that I think he knew when he was young. He's like, he was young. This kid was young. And he said, you thought he had all of this time up here, right?
Right.
But his life was taken in a short moment. And so he would always reference this. And so they decided to put that on the cover of this book. And so that was his thing. Live in the present moment. Don't wait.
Don't wait. Yeah. And
Don't wait to write your book.
Don't wait to write your book. Don't wait to take that next step in your life. Don't wait for whatever it is. I'm just seeing an interesting parallel between both covers because, that hourglass is almost symbolic of going back to that crosswalk too, in a way. So
Yeah,
very cool. It's funny how things work out like that.
I know.
So, as we start to, wrap up today's podcast, Roberta, I wonder if you have any just last pieces of advice to our listeners today, mainly for writing, but also in general for anybody out there who might be going through similar things. What might you advise to them today as we head off today?
Yeah, thank you. I think the thing is don't look at your circumstances today as that's your life, that's your reality. And so when we started coming from, stop playing the victim, we've all had something happen to us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you can stay there in that victim mentality, or you can let it go, rise above, and be more of a victor. And I love that because yeah, we did. We felt sorry for ourselves for a while. We did. It was hard. It was difficult. And if you're going through something, I get it. I understand, but you have to know that is just your circumstance right now. The past is gone, as Bob would say. It's already done. Let's start today and make changes in our life today, because the future is ahead of you and you don't know what is there, and there's anything is possible. I'm proof of that.
Yeah, you definitely most certainly are. And thanks for that. It's something we can all take with us now. And, when this podcast ends, hold with us and implement it in our own lives. Thank you. That's beautiful.
Thank you so much, Danielle.
Yeah, it's really been just an incredible conversation today. And to all of our listeners, thank you for joining us today. Roberta's journey from hairstylist to author to speaker to coach, just exactly what Authors on Mission is all about. Using your expertise and personal experiences to create impact and inspire others. So yeah, Roberta's story really reminds us that our greatest challenges can become the most powerful platforms for helping others. Your multiple books, your coaching, it all just goes to show that when you embrace your authentic self, you can do anything. So everybody listening who may be facing their own unexpected life turns or considering sharing their story through writing, remember Roberta's powerful message: it's never too late to find your purpose, to make a difference. With persistence, anything is possible. So thank you again, Roberta, for sharing your wisdom, and thank you all for tuning into Authors on Mission podcast. Until next time, keep writing, keep growing, and keep pursuing your mission. See you next time. This is Danielle Hutchinson reminding you that somewhere, someone needs the book that only you can write. Visit authorsonmission.com to start your legacy. Until next time, keep leading, keep inspiring, and keep thinking in chapters. Have a great day.